Welcome. You've reached the webinar for Maximising Productivity and Overcoming Procrastination. If you were there, I personally want to thank you. I grew so much during this webinar, as I hope you grew participating in it. You made it a lot of fun, and I really want to thank you for making it a good first webinar for me. If you're just joining us, do bear in mind that it was my first webinar, but there's some really good content in there, and I'm sure you'll get heaps of value from this. So without further ado, here it is. There'll be some links at the bottom of this email, and if you're interested in the additional content, just send me an email and I'll personally get it to you. Enjoy.
My 4-year-old MacBook's dismal video camera.
Can I say something, Jess?
Yeah, of course.
Just quickly, my roommate just commented on the fact that a productivity masterclass is a really good way to procrastinate.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So I should probably be doing my studies right now.
But arguably, doing a masterclass on productivity could increase your ability to study. So you could have been studying for 8 hours, but after this, you might only need to study for 4 hours.
Exactly, and I still haven't started studying, and it's 11:20, so.
Yeah. No, you're in the right place for sure.
Yeah.
Looks like Alicia's disappeared. Not sure what happened there. We'll continue on. So we've got the success matrix, stress, certainty, and why that's key to raising productivity, momentum, and how we can use that, energetic intention behind intention and achievement, the procrastination cycle, so that's super relevant, and I've thrown in some helpful takeaways, and I'm going to try and get you involved through the process. So you guys up for that? Awesome. And then last up, I'm going to talk about how you can take these steps further and create the productivity you desire. So that sound good? Awesome. Let's jump into it. Fantastic. So we have covered what we're going to outline, and here we have the success matrix. So basically, you can see here, its beginning part is around stress, where essentially we need to reduce stress before we can increase our energy that comes into well-being, which we can channel into productivity. If you've ever felt a time of stress, you'll know how hard it is to be authentic, happy, productive, because basically when you enter that state of stress, you're activating your sympathetic nervous system, and that's pretty much at odds with feeling a state of well-being. So it's my strategy to decrease stress, which then we can improve our well-being, which then we can channel into productivity. So basically, I've got some strategies that come under each of these key areas. So for stress, we've got the stress cooldown effect, which I'll go into next. For well-being, it's about supporting the mind, body, and spirit. But for productivity, which we're largely going to focus on today, it's about raising certainty and balancing momentum. So does that all sound pretty straightforward to you guys? You're on page with that? Awesome. So let's get into the stress cooldown effect. I don't know if you guys have ever played a video game with guns, but there's a thing called the cooldown effect, where basically for each bullet fired, it will add heat to the gun. And now if you were to stop, it would go back to empty. But if you keep firing, it's going to keep adding heat, and it will get to the point where it's now overloaded and you can't use the gun until it goes back to zero. That's a bit how our stress works. Each time you do a task or action that requires focus and intensity or concentration, it's like a bullet being fired that adds to our stress bar. And what we usually do is we get into a productive flow and we build ourselves up with stress until we get to that end of the day, or sometimes earlier, where we're frazzled and we can't focus any longer. So then at that point, we pretty much just have to be like, that's it for the day. And, we have night off, go to sleep, and we wait for our stress bar to get back to empty before starting again. So what I'd like to suggest is, what if after each task we do, instead of building the stress up, we let it go back to empty. And then that way we can actually have our well-being go up instead of building that stress up, which takes our well-being down. Because when we've got full stress, we've got low productivity. So just want to check in with you guys. Does that make sense to you with stress? Awesome, Megs. Great that you're all about Halo. Awesome. We got Alicia joining. Hey, Alicia.
Hey.
Hey, how you going? There might be a bit of a lag to give you a heads up, but basically just kind of covered what the presentation we're going through is about, and we're just up to the point where we've covered how stress, well-being, and productivity interplay, and then why it's critical to decrease stress. And now we're about to look at what I call momentum. So welcome. Basically, momentum is a pretty, established thing that we all kind of reference at one time. Oh yeah, you got to have momentum. But I've kind of dug a bit deeper and really explored what the concept of momentum is, because I actually see momentum as a subtle speed that's actually kind of tangible but invisible. And you could almost think of it as like your chi energy. When you're in a really productive place, maybe even just after you've gone for a run, you can feel that energy flowing through you and you're really amped to take action. I would say that that's because your momentum is spinning fast and strong. And so basically the things that affect momentum and are affected by momentum are activity, certainty, our energy, our drive, our vitality, and our confidence. So whenever you raise your level in each of these categories, that's going to positively or negatively affect your momentum. And likewise, when your overall momentum is low or high, it's going to reflect in these states. So when you're feeling really good, your vitality's high, you've got energy, that's when you're going to be most prone to take action. And when you're feeling low in confidence, unsure of something, that's going to be when your momentum's low and you're going to be less prone to take action. So basically, I've developed a little bit of a series of pictures here. So we've got this little character here with slow momentum. And so you can think of that as the actual speed of revolutions quite slow. And so what happens is our thoughts actually escape out before they get put into action. And that's when we're in that overthinking, underacting, procrastination phase. Whereas when our momentum's spinning fast, thoughts get put into action. And if it goes quite quick, it can be action with less consideration, which at the right time can be a good thing. And when it's balanced, that's when we've got thoughtful action where thoughts are getting their due time and then being put into action. So just thought I'd check in with you guys. And yes, 100% Megs, flow state is pretty much what momentum is, definitely. But I guess just trying to bring a bit more clarity and vision to that concept. See Meg's typing. Yeah, cool. Lovely. So right now, I thought we'd just do a little activity where we become aware of our momentum. So when you're in a typical webinar and if someone's just talking at you nonstop and you can feel your need to want to engage and then you're not taking action, you can kind of feel that you're just getting suppressed lower and lower and you're not engaged. And that's when your momentum would be low. So hopefully at the moment, I'm having you guys in a state of balanced or high momentum where you're feeling engaged. But obviously, yeah, just check in with yourselves and feel where you're at with that internal energy, because the more you can become aware of your momentum, the more you'll be able to hack that with your productivity, which I'll show you how to do later on. 100% Alicia too. Taking action definitely feels like it gets anxiety out of the way. And I'd argue that that's because when we're in an anxious state and inaction, all of our awareness is in the mind. And when we're in an action-taking state, we've actually brought some awareness down into the body, which is where we take action from. Awesome. So you guys ready to keep learning some more? Awesome. So that brings us through to certainty. So I've recognized that certainty is one of the biggest impactors of momentum. And essentially, certainty is when we know where we're at and where we want to get to and the path there. And when we have those three critical elements in place, then that actually creates a pull where we feel that momentum to get to where we want to, because we know how to get there. It's a bit like if you've ever been in a car and you go to jump in the seat and you're like, all right, let's go. It's like, where are we going? You're not going to get there in efficient time, are you? Even if, like, you know, you had a direction but not a destination, you're not going to be completely getting there with certainty. Whereas when you've got Google Maps loaded, you know exactly where you're going, you're going to get there in pretty good time because you've got that momentum, that certainty of where you're trying to get to. So that's definitely an important part of momentum. But there's a few aspects to certainty. So we can have self-certainty, which is, you know, knowing who we are, what we want to bring in terms of energy, and, you know, our values and everything that comes like that, our self-image. And then we've got action certainty, or let's go back a step, practice certainty, which that can be something like meditation, yoga, martial arts, any skillful practice that you do frequently that gives you a sense of it's something you know how to do. That's going to build your overall certainty level. And then we've got action certainty, which is what you're about to do and knowing how to do it. So that could be, you know, the task, the study that you're about to do. Let's say for you, Shai, if you know the course that you're doing and you know what the next task is, if you know what you're trying to create, you've got a strong vision of it, then you're going to sit down and you're going to absolutely smash through it. Whereas if you're like, I know I have to study, but you actually haven't drilled into what it is that you need to do when you sit down, you're going to be uncertain, and that's going to lower your momentum and productivity for that. So basically, these are the three main aspects that contribute to overall certainty. So before I get too carried away, just thought I'd check in with you guys, see how you're going there with concepts of certainty, and if that makes sense, be good to know what else. Yeah, definitely, Shay. I definitely have a future session planned to what I call the journey. So basically, you've got the position, the destination or direction. We can help define the destination and then create a path which comprises of the shortcuts that are going to get you to your destination quicker, and the pitfalls or obstacles that are going to slow you down from getting there, and also the viewpoints, what you want to experience on the way. But that'll be a future session. So have another look at certainty. So there's two main states of certainty, which are high and low certainty. High certainty being confident of the outcome, path, and next step, and low certainty, which would be the opposite. And I'd draw you to a metaphor, like if you've ever been in a house with stairs and you're walking up the stairs, in the daytime, it's quite easy. You're high certainty, you know where you're going. But you turn off the lights and you're walking up the stairs in the dark and you're on the current step and you're not sure where the next step is, you're going to find you're pretty uncertain and your momentum's going to be pretty low and you're not going to get up there very efficiently. So that's kind of the whole concept of certainty, high or low. And obviously we want to cultivate high certainty when we're doing tasks to maximize productivity. And if I just draw your attention to this little graph over here, we can see basically although I've listed 2 states, there's a fair range from none to complete certainty. As certainty goes up, so does momentum, but also as certainty is less, the energy investment goes up. Tongue-tied there. Got there though. But yeah, essentially, I can definitely dig deeper into that, but that might be the case for a future session because I don't want to bombard you with information. Just going to check on the chat. Yeah, definitely. And that's a good point too, having 100 tabs open. And that's something else I want to touch on, which is focus. But in the concern of, having everything wrapped up and streamlined, didn't want to information overload you guys. So how you guys going? Just drop in the chat how you're feeling about whole certainty and momentum. Just want to see that everyone's on the same page, feeling it.
I'm going to unmute and share Jez for you. I feel like I've never questioned why I'm procrastinating so much or like what's happening. So having that certainty thing is such a good check for like, I usually just like, I'm so bad at procrastinating. And that's kind of where my thought train stops instead of being like, why am I procrastinating? Yeah. And like, am I not actually committed to doing this task? And then I can actually ask, what do I need? Or do I just stop doing it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, nice. It's good to have that awareness because now, once you have that, whenever you come up against procrastination, you're going to be like, not certain. And it's going to have you check in. And that will probably decrease your procrastination a lot there. But I'm going to show you a little bit of a flowchart of procrastination too, and that'll help even further. So an activity we could do, feel free to do this now if you've got some tasks on your mind. Let's say for you, Shay, you've got study and you could list out the tasks that need to be done for that, research, and then actually formulating a report. Then what we can do is mark each of those things as high or low certainty, and that will prepare you later for the structuring that I'll show you how to maximize your productivity from. So while you're doing that, I just want to jam on something. I'm really big on separating tasks. Like, when you go do study, for example, and then you like, okay, I have to study. Okay, I'm going to research this and then I'm going to formulate a report. And we tend to blend that into one action, and then it becomes quite inefficient going back and forth. Whereas one of the optimal ways I've found is to actually block out 2 hours to study, but then have 1 hour, which is research, 1 hour, which is formulate report. And whenever you go into a task and you're certain of what you're doing in that moment, that's going to really drive your momentum and productivity, and you'll be able to get it done with a lot more efficiency. Procrastination's profile tip. Nice. Cool. So if there's stuff that's on your mind that you want to list down, feel free to do that now. But I'll just keep sharing on the certainty level. So basically, when our momentum is low, that's going to be when we're wanting to do the high certainty tasks. So as we know, high certainty creates momentum and low certainty takes away momentum. What I find is a good approach is to actually start the day with high certainty tasks, build that momentum. Because, going back to the stress cooldown thing, sometimes we start the day with that bar empty and we're feeling clear and we've got the energy, but we sit down at the start of the day and it takes us like 2-3 hours to actually kick into gear and become productive. And then that's when we're like, oh, fuck, I've got productivity. Now I've got to just keep going till I get to the end of the day because I don't want to lose my productivity. Do you guys ever have that happen where you start the day with energy, but you're not necessarily? Yeah, cool. So what I've found is actually starting the day with your high certainty tasks. Now that can be something you save from the day before, because, you know, perhaps at the end of the day, once you do have productivity, there's like those little trivial tasks like, oh, I've got to call that person, I've got to do this invoice, I've got to do whatever it may be. And you feel like it's actually taking your energy at that point because you've got the productivity and you want to get stuff done where you really want to use that energy for meaningful stuff, but the trivial stuff is taking away from it. Have you ever found that? So my answer to that is to start the day with high certainty tasks when your momentum is low. And then as you keep building your day through high certainty, raising your momentum, eventually you're going to get to a point where you're absolutely firing quite quickly, I've found. And then that's when you add in the low certainty tasks, because that's going to balance your momentum and bring it back. Because you can kind of think of momentum as well, like the revs on a car engine. And if we go at red line, fast momentum for too long, we're going to overheat, burn out. It's not sustainable. So we kind of want to use the low certainty task as a bit of a break for that and just bring us back down to a nice balanced area. And there's even more techniques I've got, but we'll save them for later. So I just want to check in with you guys if that makes sense to kind of balance momentum with certainty in that way. Awesome. So next I want to jam on a little bit of the energetics of intentionality. So how it kind of works from an energetic perspective, because I feel this gets missed a little bit and it's cool to have a think about. So when we become aware of a task, like, you know, let's say you sign up to a study course and then you're like, oh, okay, now I actually am aware that I have to study. You kind of formulate a bit of a mental map of the things that have to do. And so your first outlay of energy is when you actually intend to do the task. So let's say you set aside a day to study. That's actually committed a part of your energy to that intention, to that action. And then you add more energy at the part of action where you actually sit down, you open the book, you start having a look, you know, start researching, you start creating a report. Now, let's say you do that in the time you had allocated. So you said, let's say you set aside 2 hours to study and you wanted a report on chapter 1. You set the intent by setting the 2 hours, you took the action by studying diligently for 2 hours, and then at the end, you had your report and it was complete. You actually achieved your intent, and that's when you get a return on your energy. Now, you actually get more energy if you do it within your expectations or better than. But so like, let's say you finished it in an hour, you'd allocated 2 hours of energy, you just gained an hour. So you've actually got a surplus of energy back, and that's going to contribute to your momentum. Whereas if you exceeded your expectation, let's say it took you 3-4 hours to do that study, you're actually going to get less energy back than you invested because it exceeded your expectation. Now, something that often happens with the procrastination, let's say this is an ideal world where our intent action, we're achieved it in 2 hours. And what usually happens is resistance comes in. We go to study for those 2 hours, but then we realize, internet's not working. Actually, I need to research something else that I don't have access to. There's some sort of hurdle that gets in the way. And then that's when we actually need to double down our energy and add even more to get to the point of achievement. But just one thing I want to jam on, it's really important to only commit to things that we have enough energy to endure. Like, let's say you started a 6-month project to do study and that was your intent and you didn't feel achieved until you completed it. You would want to have a pretty high level of energy in the bank to go through all that action and persistence of energy commitments. And that's really why smart, realistic, achievable goals are critical, because you're setting an intent realistic to the energy you have to commit to these stages, and you'll get the energy back, which you can then reinvest in further intents. So I just want to check if that's landing with you guys and making sense. Awesome. Cool. You're on board with that, Shay? Awesome. So now we enter the procrastination cycle. So typically we have a desire, which becomes an idea, which then we breathe energy into, which then becomes something we want to do, which then we take action to do, which then results in progress, which then results in achievement in an ideal world, right? But what often comes into the equation, so from the want to stage, that raises our enthusiasm. At the action stage, it raises our momentum. And at the achievement, we get even more momentum. But what often happens at the action stage is we reach uncertainty. And that then goes into delayed action, which decreases our momentum, increases mental tension, becomes something we have to do. Our enthusiasm goes down, and then we've hit procrastination. And then usually we have to wait. If we keep trying to go against that uncertainty, we can actually whittle ourselves down to completely uncertain. And then we have to simply wait for a reset until we get back to here, until mental tension and stress goes down. That stress cooldown effect goes back to zero. And then we pretty much go back to the starting point of having that desire and then idea and go back. But I actually have found that if we focus on catching it at the uncertainty phase, when our by knowing when our momentum goes down and when we become uncertain, then we can actually catch that and raise certainty, turn it into something we want to do and have enthusiasm, and just get back to this part without having to go all the way off track and start back from the beginning. And that's really the key to overcoming procrastination. So I just wanted to check in with you guys and see if that flowchart made sense to you. Cool. So basically the key is to become aware of when our certainty drops. Like when we're trying to take action, let's say we're studying and everything's going well, and then you get to chapter 4 and you're like, hang on, how do I do this? And then you get that point of uncertainty. And if you keep trying to push against that, but you're becoming less and less certain, then you get to a point where your momentum goes down, your enthusiasm drops, and then you're like, you know what, that's too difficult. I'm going to do something else. And essentially that's what procrastination is, because you're like, yeah, you know what, that's too hard. It's too uncertain. I'm going to go on social media. I'm going to look at Facebook because I'm certain of what I'm doing there at least. And that's just a natural reaction to try and raise our level of certainty. Does that make sense, Shay? Cool. Did anyone want to unmute and share it all?
Just going to say, Jez, that it makes so much sense, and I love the chart and even like the overlaying of things like enthusiasm, because that's what feels so real for me. Well, that's what I notice is like that drop of enthusiasm, and then I kind of, especially working for yourself, you're like, do you even want to do this? Why aren't you enthusiastic about this? You're living the dream, but you're not experiencing it that way. And it's often, like you say, actually tied back to how certain I am about something, or like my mind just craving something even more simple for like a period of time, because I've tried to fit too much big thinking into one.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I feel that. I've definitely gone through that, which is where these insights came from, which I had a bit of a laugh to myself that I should have a procrastination. I was like, isn't that the ultimate form of procrastination? Creating a flowchart on procrastination.
So true.
Nice. Cool. So let's recap. So basically, we've got managing stress, improving well-being, raising certainty, harnessing momentum, and then creating a strategy. So here's an example of how, now obviously this is like pretty regimented, and like depending on your level of structure preference, you might not go this part. You can just mentally go, I'm going to do my high certainty stuff first. So basically, this is where I'll do like data entry, anything that's like making phone calls, or anything where I can set a really small intention and get that achievement quickly. And then that's going to start adding more energy to my bank for the day and build that momentum. So like going back to that intention and achievement flow, yeah, anything that's got like minimal energy investment and quick return on energy, kind of it almost sounds financial, doesn't it? Like, you know, I'm just trying to put in small investments and get like little returns consistently. That's pretty much how it works with your energy at the start of the day. So I'll just draw your attention. So I actually have a morning routine where, you know, I get up straight away. I'll wake up first time. So sometimes that's like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I'll have the hot water with lemon, then yoga, then meditation, maybe a bit of like actual resistance training, and then meditation. And so one of my techniques is to do as many things in your first hour as waking up with high certainty, with meaning and purpose behind it. So I usually don't try and have any time just to sit there and like wake up. I usually like get up within like a second of waking up, force myself to do this, and then it becomes second nature over time. But what I've found is the first 5 minutes of waking up kind of set the trajectory for your next hour, and your first hour sets the trajectory for the rest of your day. And basically, if you can do everything with meaning and purpose, high certainty in that first hour of your morning routine, then that's going to set you up for a really productive day. Also, one thing I wanted to just catch on, good to see you screenshotting. Basically, when you do a morning routine, I don't know if are you guys big on morning routine? So what I've found, it's definitely easy to go off track. And sometimes, you know, whether it's meditation, you know, any type of practice, which is what a routine is, you know, we can think, oh, well, if I'm not doing like half an hour of meditation, then it doesn't count. But I've found with morning routines, just even having like 5 minutes of yoga where you just get there and just become present can definitely keep the mental concept of a morning routine pinned in. Like, even if you're not doing like, you know, that whole perfect work day kind of routine, just having like one stabilizing practice is something that's really critical. And if you can identify for you what's the most essential thing that adds to your well-being and make that a priority at the start of the day, then that's probably going to give you your biggest bang for buck. Yeah, 100%, 100% makes. I would argue that the intention and certainty is, because really when you have a morning routine and it becomes something that you're certain of, that's what gives you quite a good feeling. And what you can do, because I've found I've got to the point where that morning water, yoga, exercise isn't really giving me a sense of accomplishment now. It's just kind of like the standard wake up protocol. And what I came to realize is, if we get to too high level of a certainty, it actually doesn't give us any more sense of accomplishment, because it's just become, you know, built in. So that's when any practice like yoga or exercise, we need to kind of increase the resistance, because let's say next time you try a pose that's a bit more challenging, it was uncertain. And then when you became certain of it, you feel accomplished that you've now learned something new. You raised your level of certainty and you expanded yourself, because you can now, that's something you know you can do more. So just thought I'd touch on that one. But yeah, so basically, let's just flow through here. I've got some, do you guys want me to go deeper on some of the stuff in there quickly, or do you just want me to run through like the momentum and certainty stuff? No worries. Thanks for dropping by, Alicia. Cool. So what I actually like to do is start off the day with the morning routine, get that, you know, that stuff that I'm highly certain of, just starts the day, raises momentum. And then I've actually got quite a bit of energy, because, you know, I've done something that's for mind, body, and spirit. I've done yoga, which is a combination of three, meditation, which is more of the mental and spirit, and then exercise, which is more of the body and bringing awareness from mind into body. Then I actually start the day with what I call a direction planner. So I've actually created a Excel or Google Sheets document where I'll just, like, at the start of the day, mind map, list out every task that's on my mind and get everything off my mind, because I'm a fair overthinker. And I'll just list an aggregate list of tasks, and then I'll selectively pick what ones I'm going to do that day, and I'll list them by certainty level and what's urgent, what has to be done that day. And from there, I add them into my calendar, because I actually, despite how that looks, I actually hate routine. And if I did this, map this out for a week in advance, like, it would not give me the flexibility in my life that I need. I would feel like I'm on a treadmill. So what I do is I actually have this set as a template calendar, and it's something that I reference, but on a daily basis, I'll actually map out my calendar for that day and go, what do I feel like doing? And that gives me a bit of alignment for what I actually feel like doing. And so I find, though, it's really critical to have, for me, to have that mental organization. I need to be asked, basically that part at 7 a.m., I need to be able to answer the question, what am I doing today? And if I can answer that by the end of it, then I know that I'm certain of what I'm doing. I've got my intention, you know, maybe some non-negotiables, things that I know have to be done. And then that's going to give me actually a bit of a sense of purpose for what my day is about. Next off, actually, before moving on, yeah, I can share that with you, Megs, definitely. Okay, cool. I can definitely jam on the flow there, Shay. So basically, let's say we've started the day, we know what we're doing, and we've got a general overall sense of certainty and momentum. But when it comes to our actual actions, our study, whatever it may be, we've sat down and we've got that energy ready. That's when we've got to do whatever the high certainty tasks are first that require less energy. So we could either break down our tasks into small actions that we're completely certain of. That could be one way to do it, because you're not always going to have phone calls and, you know, little actions that you can fill into this slot. So if you don't have that, then the best way would be to break it down into actions that are small and achievable with high certainty. But basically, the ideal way for it to flow is start the day with raising momentum as the intention, and trying to keep any uncertainty, like in this first period, completely out of the equation. Like anything with medium to less certainty, I wouldn't go near. And basically, it might take you 3 hours, it might take you an hour to raise your momentum. But when you have momentum fully flowing, like, I don't know if you guys have ever been in like such a productive state where you're like absolutely just smashing the keyboard and, you know, it's completely flowing. You're in that flow state. The thing is with that, you can't keep that going forever, because you're going to burn your energy out, because it requires a lot of energy. What I would do is, when you've done something like that, yeah, I know that's an awesome state. I'd moderate that with a low certainty task, or even I factor in a bit of exercise, like just go for a walk. And because what I've found is when you get into that flow state, you can bring your awareness a lot into the mind, and you can feel the mental tension that's built up. So you can think of it as that stress cool bar effect. It's added a bit of stress. And what we want to do is, after that task is completed, go for a walk, go do some handstands is what I do, and bring that stress back down to zero. So yeah, that's a good tip. Don't overlook it. The wall handstands, really good for productivity. But yeah, basically, I actually like to do the Pomodoro technique in these flows. And then like in the 5 minutes off, I'll do either meditation or a handstand and just kind of recenter between every task. I think that's something that's really essential, is to keep that stress cool bar effect in mind. And whenever we feel mental tension raise, don't worry, see Alex, whenever we feel mental tension raise, to become aware of that and bring it back down to zero. And that's, if you guys are familiar with the term of like stillness and presence, like, you know, when you're like really feeling in that state, that's when we can be. Is that the slide you were looking for there, Shay? Feel free to unmute.
I just found the unmute button. It was just the one with the points, like managed. Yeah, that one. Oh, no, one back. That one. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries. So, Meg, Shay, is that sounding to make sense with you? Is there anything that I can expand on there or jam on?
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. I loved certainty. Like, that's really landed with me as like what I can see as like a problem driver in my productivity. One thing that I'm really interested in is that like I find it really difficult, and it's probably a personality thing, but to be disciplined, even if I do Pomodoro, I find myself like the timer goes off and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to finish this thing. And then my 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes and then I've rolled into the next task. And then by the end of the day, you're like, I didn't take lunch, I've snowballed. So
yeah. And that's definitely a few adjuncts to productivity, focus and discipline.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that I've worked on cultivating for a while. And I find it's pretty crucial to be able to self-regulate and go, you know, my mental tension's high. My momentum's high. Actually, I'm going to do this. Because it feels pretty good to be in those states. You know, when you got the flow, it's hard to stop. So totally appreciate that.
I guess it's also evidence, right? So like the more you do it and you realize, yeah, that did cool down my like my plasma rifle bar on the stress, that I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, that actually works, then I'm like more likely to do it next time. But if you always skip it, then how are you ever going to know, you know, like I don't have the evidence. So I need to like try it on and do it for the week and be like, oh, that actually I ended up achieving everything because I tried it versus.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've collated a few top 10 productivity gainers, just, you know, as a helpful takeaway. So these are things that have definitely been relevant to me to increasing my productivity. So routine's probably number one, and let's integrate with that, you know, raising momentum and certainty. But often overlooked one is blood sugar imbalances. You know, when you're eating carbs or not eating regularly enough, and you're going through those phases and swings of eating high sugar stuff and then getting the crash afterwards, that's definitely something that impacts productivity pretty negatively. As sleep, having that consistent evening routine and wake cycle, that's definitely something that can allow you to feel well-being and channel that into productivity. Over exercising, that's one I experienced where I actually exercised too much for my state, and it led to lethargy, inflammation, and reduced cognitive function. Quitting coffee was something that, not for everyone, but personally, I've gone 12 months without coffee before, and recently I had my first coffee in 6 weeks, and I could totally feel this like dirty energy that it provided. Wasn't really giving me much clarity or focus. I could just feel I was amped up, but it was scattered. And then for about a day or two after, I could feel the cognitive impairment due to the lethargy that it created, where it's energy it gave me, it took back plus some. So for me, quitting coffee had massive productivity gains. Parasympathetic nervous system. So that's kind of that whole stress cooldown effect. When we become too stressed, we take away from our well-being. And if we're in that sympathetic nervous system state too long, then that'll definitely impact our productivity. Nutrition, getting a balanced diet with a high amount of nutrient-dense food, that definitely provides a good brain state to garner more cognitive function. Just simple enjoyment in life is something that I personally have struggled with in the past, because I've become so logical and analytical, and trying to look at everything from a risk-benefit analysis, like, if I do that, then it's going to give me X. But simply just being present and enjoying experiences sometimes is what you need for well-being. And then, of course, mental state, quietening the mind, becoming away from that distracted mind, improving discipline and focus, and then physical condition, improving flexibility, strength, everything that kind of increases our ability to have energy flow through us, and the capacity for that is going to be more that we can channel into well-being and productivity. Have you guys had any of those that you've found affect you? Coffee looks like it's one.
I've never, have I quit coffee? I quit coffee for a week and it was such a struggle. I never used to drink it though, which is interesting. Like, I was a late bloomer on coffee, and I feel like I was more productive before I did.
Yeah, I was probably about 20 when I first started drinking coffee, working in an office, and I've got a pretty addictive personality, and it escalated to the point that I was doing admin at the time, and I was like covering like 5 directors, and I was like having 5 espressos a day, and after about 2 months of doing that, I could definitely feel like I'd overworked my adrenal kind of system and was starting to go into a crash, but kind of kept trying to go. And yeah, ever since then, it's definitely impacted my ability to stress with the whole cortisol and whatnot. But it's good because that process has brought me to this. So my loss is your gain.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think also it's the coffee gives you energy, but then like if you switch off and like you're like meditate for 5 minutes in between your like sections of work, and like when you're kind of amped, it's really hard to do that. Like,
yeah,
to stop maybe. Like, I don't know if I was like pure focus versus like coffee focus, or like coffee. Yeah, I don't. Do you relate, Shane?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that stress cool down, I think that's what I do, but I go off and make a coffee in that time.
Yeah.
And then that does just, bring up like the sort of scattery, jittery energy, and actually it's not real focus. Yeah. No,
because it kind of like increases the energy that is circulating, but it's just like chaotic, and it's so hard to focus that. Like, when I've had coffee, I've literally found myself just like having to like breathe and like meditate, because it's like actually stimulated me that much.
Too much. Yeah, me too.
So some last takeaway hacks. So Pomodoro technique, that's been touched on. Exercise between workflows. So that's kind of just bringing that mental awareness out of the mind and into the body, decreasing mental tension. Meditation between workflows too. That's something I've found. Something that I got put onto in the last year, which I've found is a total game changer. Yoga Nidra. Shay, you might have heard of that. Have you heard of that, Meg?
Is it the one with your nose?
No, it's when you basically, it's called like yogic sleep. So you lay down and you're not meant to sleep, but you actually wave your energy through mind, body, all the way throughout your body, and it is intended to put you in a really deep state of relaxation. But it totally resets your nervous system. I've found, like, if there's one thing that you want to do to get that stress bar back to empty, Yoga Nidra is a good thing. Like, so like what I've found is doing that. Like, there was a time when I was only getting 3 hours of sleep a night and I was being super productive, but I was doing Yoga Nidra every 4 hours, and that was actually giving me enough of a recharge that I could go again and be super productive for like a whole day. So I will send links to that after. And change it up, you know, basically just keep things varied. Awesome. Nice. I'm going to stop presenting now. Just come back to me.
There was the webinar. I definitely saw some areas that I could improve my conduct and how I host it, but that's all part of the journey, growing and learning. And I definitely have a lot of inspiration from it now in how I can create content that's more relevant and that I feel enthused to do. So if you feel like I can help you with anything, do contact me and we can work out how I can do that. In the future, I'm planning to have a range of things going from ebooks to e-courses, all the way through to one-on-one coaching, workshops and everything. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, do reach out if you feel that I can help you in any way. You can connect with me via Instagram, LinkedIn or Facebook. With Facebook, I'm planning on creating a bit of a community where we have active work sessions and kind of just a bit of a free flow, level up type thing where I just share kind of what I know and get people to participate and just kind of create that space where we can kind of grow together. And I feel like that would be good. So if you're interested in that, look up JC Coaching 111 or just contact me through Instagram. Insert tagline. Level up together. Something.